Okay, now we're going to create a new Jupyter notebook using the R kernel. We'll make a simple notebook that has some code that prints hello world. We'll save this as hello. And now we want to push this very important code back to GitHub. So how do we do this? So if we go back to our Jupyter Home or our Navigator, we can see that in addition to the README and the repository, there's a second file. But this second file doesn't exist on GitHub yet. We can just go verify by going back to GitHub, refreshing the repository, and we see that only README exists. So going back to Jupyter Home, how do we get this file that's living on the server that we just created up to our GitHub repository? Well, we need to do a couple things. We need to add the file, which tells Git it's an important file and we want to start paying attention to it. We need to commit the changes that we made, which you can think of as like logging, making a log of the changes we made. And then we're going to do a command called git push, which sends those changes up to GitHub, and we'll actually be able to see them online on the repository. Since we're working on a server, we have to do this through the terminal. So we're going to go back to the terminal, and I'm just going to type clear to get rid of the previous commands that I wrote so that they are not distracting. And we need to type git add and then the name of the file that we want to be telling Git about. So this one, I was trying to use tab completion and it's not tab completing, and this is giving me a hint that I was just about to gloss over. So when we're in the terminal, we're not necessarily in the same place in the file system as where we are when we're navigating Jupyter Home. When we first open the terminal, we end up in the same place where we first end up when we go to Jupyter Home, but we navigated away from that, right? We navigated inside of that repository. So we need to do the same thing here with the file system on the terminal before we can start running Git commands. So we're going to have to use a couple commands to figure out where we want to go and move there. So one is called ls, and ls tells us what are all the files and folders in the working directory where the terminal currently is. And we can see this one is the Git repository that we're working with, and so we want to go into that folder and run our commands there. So to get there, we need to use a command called cd, and then we type out the name of the repository or folder that we would like to move into. And we hit enter to run that command, and the prompt, this thing on the left-hand side here, changed a little bit, which hints we might be where we think we want to be. But to be sure that we're exactly where we want to be, we can use another command called pwd, which tells you where the current working directory is, like where you are currently on that computer. And so I'm currently inside of DSCI 100-frac, which is the repository I want to work in. So I'm good to go. At this point, I can start doing the things I need to do with Git to send the changes up to GitHub. So again, the first thing we need to do was git add the file name. And then I need to type git commit -m, and then inside quotations some message that's meaningful to to what changes we made to the file at this point in time. So we wrote our first code cell, let's say, and we get some output from that code that gives us a bit of a hint about what changes are being logged. And what changes does Git log? It logs is the changes between this and then the last version of the file it knew about. Since this was the first time Git knew about this file, it's going to log everything that was there. But the next time, it's only going to log the differences between the two versions of the files. Okay, so we did git add the file name up here. And then we did git commit with our commit message. The last thing we need to do to send it to GitHub is to do git push. And it's going to ask us for our username. So that's your GitHub username. And then it's going to ask us for our GitHub password. Okay. And we get this $sign back, so we think things have worked, but we always want to double check things. So we go over to the GitHub repository and refresh it. And now we can see that that code file exists, and we can click on it. And we can see that GitHub renders this code file, and so we can see the code that we wrote as well as the output.